Hey everybody, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to Beekeeping for Newbies. Thank you very, very much for taking the time out of your day to join me. I do appreciate you. And as always, feel free to join us over in the Discord room. If you go to Beekeeping for Newbies, it's NEWBEES.com. We have a link to the Discord room right from there. Okay, well, Howard and I are here with you today for episode 152. And if you're wondering who Howard is, I will post a picture in the Discord room here. But Howard is one of the two cats who always likes to sleep about 5 feet away from the microphone. And when he heard today's warm-up song, which is Glycerine by Bush from 1995, he had to come over and he is now in my lap. And that's kind of fun and cool when you're not dealing with the most uncoordinated cat in the world. But when he likes to fall off because he has no balance, those nails come out and he just latches on to my legs here. So anyway, we're going to go ahead and push forward. I wanted to give you a quick note before we dive in here. When you join the Discord room, you're going to see a channel that is going to have just the rules of the channel. That's all that's there. There's nothing else visible. What I need you to do is just go ahead and read through kind of the rules and what we've outlined there. It's really, really simple. Just, be nice to people. Don't be a bully, whatever. And then at the bottom, you just need to type in yes, that you agree to those. Once myself or one of the other moderators sees that, they will let you in, and then you'll have visibility into everything else. I'm seeing probably about 20% of people are joining, and they're making it to the Discord room, but they're not actually reading that first section and typing yes. So please do that so that you can join the rest of us and have some fun laughs over there in the regular Discord room. I will do one quick update on the ongoing saga with the trip out west in my daughter's car. I went on Monday. Well, let me go back a little bit further here. So this past weekend, my middle daughter graduated from the University of Virginia, had an opportunity to go to the campus, see this amazing ceremony. It was really, really a good time. She had this roommate. I'm not going to mention her name, but she's been her roommate since they first got there, first year. And they were in the dorms for a year, and they've been in this townhouse for 3 years, and it seems like it was just yesterday. And it's so crazy to see these young ladies, as bright as they are, going out into the world. And it's just a really, really good time. We had a lot of family together, and it was pretty exciting to see the young graduates walking from the rotunda down to the main stage area, and it was definitely interesting. But came back home at the end of the weekend, and I looked like Jed Clampett driving, what was that show? The Beverly Hillbillies. That's it. So I look literally like the Beverly Hillbillies. I've got all this stuff in the back of the Jeep. It's like a Gladiator. So there's all this stuff hanging out of it. I have no idea how nothing ended up on the highway. But we got it all back to the house. Now it all lives, everything from my daughter's townhouse now lives in my dining room. So that's awesome. But we made it back safely. Monday, my uncle and I got in the truck, drove to Kentucky to pick up my daughter's car. The guys there at the Ford dealership said, yeah, transmission shot, man. You need a new transmission. Local guys here at the local shop I dropped it off with, they're doing a rebuild for half the price. So what do? I mean, they're the best transmission shop in the area. Done business with them before. So that is another exciting. I'm excited to get the car fixed and have it running again. I'm really not excited about the $4,500 part of that. But on the bright side, I did sell my bee trailer yesterday. So that takes care of that. All right, let's move in. This is going to be the final Bee Buzz in this 3 Bee Buzz series. In my mind, I thought, we'll just do one and we'll get all the questions knocked out. But as you guys know, it takes so much time to go through all of them, and we have so many. I think I had this list, which ended at 21, and then I added a bunch more. I take that back. It ended at 16. I thought, that's perfect. We'll get that done in a half hour. Then I added 5 more from the other day, and here we are. Okay, so let's get started with the first question on the list for today. I installed 2 packages 10 days ago. When should I do the first mite wash? I would hope that whoever is selling these bees to you, that they are selling you bees that have recently been treated and that they are very healthy. With that assumption, I would wait until the 30-day point to go ahead and let them get settled in, do your first wash, and then adjust your treatment strategy based on the results of that. Any recommended videos for how to tell the difference between angry bees and curious flying around bees? So I don't remember exactly where that question came from, because like I said, I assembled this list quite a long time ago. But when you're just observing bees, from a distance, it's kind of hard to tell unless there is very specific aggressive behavior. So like if you're on the side watching and you see bees fighting, it's pretty obvious. So they're rolling around, they're obviously angry about something. Now, if the bees are around you, they tend to buzz a little louder. They will bounce off of your body. Quite often they'll try to bounce off your head. And those are all warnings like, hey, you need to get out of here. I'm not real happy with your presence. But just visualizing, just looking at them, it's really hard to tell because, they're flying, they're moving, they're very quick. So I don't know that I have a really good recommendation of how you would just watch a video and see if they're angry or not angry. Just really what it comes down to is how do they approach you? If you walk up and they just kind of fly right past, like bees coming out of the hive and they're going out to go forage and they just fly right on by you, pretty obvious they're not angry. They start bouncing off of you, different story. I don't know if that answered the question or not, but hopefully that helps. I just installed 2 packages of bees. One hive has a lot more activity after the install than the other, with about twice as many bees coming and going as the other one. Should I be concerned, and what does this mean? When you have a colony that is established and they're in the hive and they have pheromonal equilibrium, which is not a technical term, I sort of just made that up, but when all the pheromones of the hive that are typically present are present, everything is in balance, and they're making adjustments based on the feedback they are receiving from each other, things will tend to go relatively smoothly in the absence of other interruptions like pests or disease or anything else. Now, when you do an install, it takes a little bit of time for all the balance to come together, for everybody to figure out who's who, what's what. Once they're established, they know what they have, they know what they don't have, they know what they need. More and more foragers will begin leaving, and quite often, if you already have bees that were a part of that package mix that were foragers, they're going to go out and they're going to want to go forage again. If you have bees that are mostly nurse bees, at some point they're going to have to start saying, okay, well, we don't have foragers, there's no forager pheromone, we need to start promoting. So it may take a couple of days for things to kind of balance out. Don't worry about it at all. If you get to the 1 week point and you're still seeing the same thing, one of them is really, really active and the other one is not, that's where I would start being concerned. But just give them, 3 or 4 days and everything should balance out. Is there ever signs when bees don't have enough food? Yes. The best sign is when you open up the hive and there's no food. Outside the hive, everybody has to eat. All the bees within the hive have to eat. You've got to have pollen. You've got to have carbohydrates in the form of nectar and honey to feed the existing bees. But primarily, you have to feed the developing larvae. Those are the ones that are going to be replacing all the bees that are there today. So you've got to have plenty of food on hand. If they don't have food coming in, then they're not going to raise more brood. So you'll see if there is no food available that's coming in at all, then they're going to cut off brood production. If they're running out of food stored within the hive, then they're going to starve. If there's no flow and no food in the hive, they're going to starve. So I would say that this question is really almost seasonal. You may come out of the winter where they have no food really stored away, but there's tons of food coming in, so they should be able to replenish things, and you may be supplemental feeding as well. But the only real signs you're going to see, aside from literally bees dying, is if you open up the hive and you see, okay, well, there's 2 frames of honey left, so they still have food. I mean, it's more of a observation than a sign. Okay, next question. If I left out a brood box with drawn comb, is there any likelihood that a swarm would just arrive? So I think the idea here would be, instead of making a formal kind of swarm trap based on somebody's plans, can I just stick a bee box in the yard and see what happens? When a colony swarms, there are certain things that they're kind of, hardwired to want to look for. There are certain kind of criteria that they like to have, and that's where the dimensions of a swarm trap have kind of been standardized almost. That kind of 40-liter roughly sized container is about what bees want to find. That being said, if they don't find that, the window of opportunity between when they leave to start the swarm and when they move into a new location could be a few hours, could be a couple of days, depending on weather conditions. So if you have just a regular beehive sitting in the yard and they need a place to go and they haven't found something better, you can absolutely have bees move into that. You know, if you watch, I'm not a TikToker, but I know they have on TikTok, probably Instagram Reels. I'm sure there's YouTube Shorts and other platforms have people creating content in this area. But look around, you'll see people extracting beehives from old washing machines, dryers, charcoal grills. You know, I think somebody in our Discord room mentioned that they had a chest of drawers or something on the back porch and they moved into that. If there's a space they can get in and out of and it's dry and it has relatively limited access, they're going to take advantage of it. So sure, if you want to put a box in the yard, one thing I would caution you about is you may want to put maybe a mouse guard or some hardware cloth in front of it to keep mice from going in. Check it out periodically. Where I am, we have the lovely, beautiful palmetto bug, aka the disgustingly gross cockroach. So cockroaches like to go in there and hide out. Sometimes a wasp will go in there and try to create a little wasp nest because it's a dry area. Just put your bee suit on and get rid of them. But outside of that, you can absolutely catch a swarm that way. Can a new queen survive without feeding if there's no nectar flow yet? Now, I'm going to take this to mean, can a colony survive if there's not a nectar flow? And the answer to that is absolutely yes. The colony can survive in the absence of a nectar flow. That's the whole purpose of honey, right? So the bees are going to start gathering, let's just use generically, we'll say in the month of March. They're going to start gathering. They'll gather March through May or June. In my area, there's a summer dearth. We have a light fall flow. And then from probably mid to late September, maybe, all the way until February, there's nothing. There is no flow. There's no resources available. And they are surviving off of what they stored away. As long as conditions are right and everything went well, they should have stored plenty of nectar away, which has become honey, and that would be all they would need to make it to next spring. In some cases, you need to supplemental feed because of the conditions that you created, by maybe multiple splits of that colony earlier in the year. They could need to be fed because of you're keeping bees in an area that's really not a good place to keep bees, so you have no choice but to feed them. Or sometimes you just get a really light fall flow and you need to boost them a little bit. But in an ideal world, you won't be feeding them at all and they're living 100% off of what they find in the environment. Okay, how can I tell the difference between swarm cells and supersedure cells? A couple of things. A lot of people will tell you, well, swarm cells are always going to be on the lower 1/3 of a frame and supersedure cells are going to be in the middle. And I hear it all the time. Someone's like, oh my God, I got 30 supersedure cells in my colony. The first thing I'd like you to do is just go ahead and visualize like 4 mediums. Let's just say that you have standardized on all medium-sized equipment in a Langstroth hive. So you're using medium equipment across the board and you have 4 of them. Now let's say that the brood chamber is primarily comprised of maybe, let's say, the bottom 2 and maybe a little bit up into that 3rd medium. Instead of looking at it as boxes or individual frames, look at it as a brood chamber. So visualize, let's say, the medium that is in position 1 at the bottom and number 2. View those as one whole brood area and then look towards the lower 1/3 of that. So you may have something at the very top of that bottom box or the lower third of the next box and still be all swarm cells. One thing you can look for is during supersedure, it usually only tends to be like 1 or 2 cells. It's not a situation where they're overcrowded and they're looking to expand and they're looking to split off into 1 or more other colonies or, creating 1 or more other colonies. They just need a single good quality queen to come out to replace the existing queen. So instead of looking at position, I would say if you see 1 or 2 and they're probably somewhere near the middle, yeah, that most likely might be supersedure. When you see swarm cells, it's like 20 or, at least 5 or 6. Very rarely in a good nectar flow do I see like 2 or 3 swarm cells. Normally there's like a half dozen. I've seen some colonies that have, 3 or 4 of them on every frame and you end up with like 18 or 20 of them. So that's really, and you don't see them together. Like I think I saw somebody mention not long ago, yeah, I've got 4 supersedure cells and 16 swarm cells. No, they're all swarm cells. Okay, next, is it okay to requeen in the spring? Yes, that's usually what I will do. when it's time to requeen, I will allow the queen who has already overwintered 2 other winters for me. I will let her overwinter that 3rd winter, and then I'll replace her in the spring. Next, why are my bees acting aggressive during spring inspections? Now, we think typically in the springtime that the bees are generally happier. They've made it through the winter. There's plenty of resources available. They're not contending with a lot of robbing and other insects and things that may be trying to harass them, like yellow jackets or wasps or anything. They're not messing with them because there's plenty of food in the environment. So when you have a colony that is acting aggressively in the spring, well, anytime really, but primarily in the spring, there's 2 things that I would look towards. One being a genetic component, because obviously that's a big driver of behavior. But the other part is, how are you doing your inspections? And what I mean is, visualize this colony of bees living up in a tree. So if a bear is climbing the tree, there's going to be a lot of shaking, moving, vibration. There's going to be a lot of sounds and things that they're going to sense that they can tell is not normal. So if you're going and doing an inspection and you drop your hive tool on top of the hive, and then you're setting your smoker on top and you're banging things around, you take the lid off and you're just kind of throwing things around, you're not handling frames slowly and gently and very deliberately, all of those things can play a factor into how the bees respond to your presence. So just take it slow. And one thing I can tell you, I definitely remember from the early days, I want to get in, I want to get out, get this done, right? Like, I don't want to be there all day. I'm a little nervous. I don't want to get stung. Like, I completely understand where a lot of you newer folks are, and you're just trying to just get this done. Let's get it over with. Hopefully I'll see the queen, but maybe I'll just pull a frame of some eggs and we'll just close this all up and get out of here quickly, because I definitely get that. But take your time. It's not a race. The bees do pretty well with everything being open for a little while. Take your time, put a little smoke down, grab one frame, nice and easy. If they start to get a little agitated, throw a couple more puffs of smoke down, but just take it slow. Now, if they get really, really agitated and you're going slow and you're not making a lot of vibration, you're not knocking things into the hive, you're not dropping frames, right? That's a thing that will really get the bees upset. If you're not doing any of those things, you may want to look at, if this is a consistent problem, you may want to look at the idea of requeening the hive, to bring in some different genetics. But if you have a mentor or somebody who can help you out and take a look, it would be good to get a second set of eyes or a second opinion on that. How much brood is normal in late April or early May? I would say, it's all going to depend on where you are. There's some places in late April that really haven't started doing anything yet. And there's other places in late April that have already seen, 2 swarms or whatever. So I would say that, it's very regional, regionally dependent. But what you should expect to see during a normal flow, assuming, let's say that you're using 10-frame Langstroth hardware, what you should probably expect to see is about anywhere between 4 and maybe 7 frames that are completely packed with capped brood. That queen is going to run through there and just be laying eggs like crazy. Those nurse bees are going to keep raising that brood. Foragers are out there bringing back everything they can, and they are 100% in ramp-up mode. So you can see several frames of capped brood. I would expect to see at least, 3 or 4, and sometimes as much as even 6 or 7. Next, is it too early for mites? Do I need to test in the spring? I would recommend that within one of your first 2 or 3 inspections in the spring that you are pulling mite counts. Hopefully, if everything goes well, when they overwintered and they weren't raising any brood, that any varroa mites you had, they can still be, clinging to your bees and feeding off of them over the winter, just waiting for the opportunity to jump into some brood so they can reproduce in the spring. But do a mite count early. That way you know what you're up against. If they overwintered with very, very low numbers, get ahead of that fast. Get a treatment in early in the spring. Get multiple treatments in depending on the method that you're using. But get a handle on that in the spring. You have to. If you wait until the summer, some people I know have said, no, I don't even treat in the spring. I just wait till the summer dearth because there's no brood then and I can get them all at once. Well, that's cool. You might get them all at once and you might have 0 mite counts in July. And you also may have viral loads that are completely through the roof and dead bees by like September, October. So stay on top of it, get ahead of it early in the spring, because if you don't, they will ramp up fast. As your brood production in the hive is ramping up, so will Varroa production. Okay, next, I'm seeing a little tiny beetle looking thing in the hive. Is that a problem? Yes. That little tiny beetle thing is called the small hive beetle. They are very problematic. They will lay their eggs in pretty much anything they can. They like to go into corners and nooks and crannies to lay their eggs. Then more of them will come out in a larval form. They will eat honey and brood and whatever they can get to. And then they will ultimately work their way out the front door, drop down to the ground and go, an inch or two below the surface, stay down there for 30 or 40 days to pupate. And then they emerge as a new hive beetle, and they will harass you, your neighboring bees, and all the bees in the areas they can fly to. Yes, they definitely fly. Some people don't know that. They do fly, and they will fly from hive to hive. If you're using pollen patties, they love pollen patties. So if you put a pollen patty on, I recommend breaking it into very small pieces. Distribute those pieces to multiple hives. Don't leave them on for more than probably 3 or 4 days. If you do, they will lay eggs in them. Put them on for 3 or 4 days. If there's anything left over, maybe take it out, throw it in the freezer for a few days, and then you can bring it back out again if you need to continue feeding with that. But yes, those little black small hive beetles are a problem. Next, can I use screen bottom boards in spring, or will they chill the brood? So it's a very dangerous time in the spring, particularly like late winter into early spring. And, a lot of places in the country, in the U.S. right now, are still getting these really, really cold spells. The nurse bees, their primary job is, of course, raising and rearing and protecting and caring for new brood. That's all they do. If you have a whole lot of brood and there are not enough bees to cover and warm and protect those, that developing brood, you can absolutely, chill the brood and have them die. I recommend, if you're going to go to a screened bottom board, I recommend doing that pretty much wherever you are. Just do it in the U.S. If you're doing it, wait until June. Let's just say like 1 June, something like that. That way you've gotten all the cool, the really cool nights out of the way. You're really minimizing the risk. But as that colony ramps up, once you get past that first, 4 weeks probably coming out of the winter, you're going to have so many bees emerging that it's basically just like them clustering in the wintertime. They'll form a big cluster. They'll keep the brood warm, and it really shouldn't be a big issue. What's the best treatment for mites in early spring? Well, I don't think there is a best treatment. I think it really comes down to, what are your mite counts looking like? What's your treatment strategy? What's your honey production, goals? What do you have in mind as far as honey that you would like to get out of the hive for that season? There's a lot of different ways that you can go. So it's really going to kind of just have to go to the that depends type of thing. I'm a big oxalic acid fan. I like it. It's gentle. It's effective. It can be applied with honey supers on. So that's kind of my go-to. You could do, the OA, the dribble. You could do the pads. Or you can go ahead and do the traditional vaporized approach and just do multiple treatments. Any of those should be fine. But again, it's really dependent on your not your viral loads, but your mite counts. If your mite counts are, low to moderate, you can kind of get away with that. If they're looking a little heavy, you might have to get a little more aggressive. Can I move a hive in the spring, or will it confuse the foragers? This is kind of a fun little thing that's up for debate. I know a lot of people have for a long time said, oh, well, if you just want to get them to do a reorientation flight, just put some stuff in front of the hive, and when they leave, they'll reorient. I've heard that for a long time, and I've never tested it, so I can't say, yes, this works, or no, it doesn't. But just kind of talking through it, right, if you think about this. So you move them to a new location to force them to reorient. But remember, when they're out flying, it's not the exit that's the problem. It's the return. And I use the example a lot of when I moved 1/3 of a mile down the street. My bees know exactly what it looks like in the sky to return back to their home. So yeah, they may have reoriented to what it looks like around the hive, but once they got up into the sky and they're flying at treetop levels and they're looking for all the things they want to eat, on the way back, all the markers that they know of within, the treetops and all the areas they fly through, that is going to take them back to the other hive. Like, that's what happened to me. There were probably, I think it was like around 500 to 1,000 bees on the fence right above where each of the two hives were. There was, a little cluster of bees on the left, and then like 3 feet over, there's another cluster of bees on the right, just above where they are hanging off the fence. So I just don't think that works. And again, I don't mind being wrong. I don't mind being wrong at all. I just really don't think that the changing of what they see on their way out completely reprograms where they go on their way back in. But one of these days, it's already on my to-do experiment list. So one of these days we will do some experimentation. I've got friends who live in the area, and I will move my hives, a quarter mile, half mile. We'll try some different things with that and see what happens. Do I need to paint or seal new boxes before putting bees in them? I think that depending on what you're buying, you got to do whatever you got to do to protect it. So some people will do like the wax dipped. I would say if you're going to do the wax dipped, to just buy them that way. It's probably a lot cheaper, and it'll be a lot more kind of thorough and comprehensive kind of, they'll have the right equipment. They can do it fast. And I've heard really good things about it. So I think that, the wax dipping is a really cool way to go. I just use paint, but every exterior surface needs to be painted and protected from the elements. I picked up a bee box just the other day I think it's like 12 years old, and it's still in really good shape. So, keeping them protected in the off season, or if you don't have bees in them at the time, putting them in a storage area of some sort where they're out of the elements, and the hardware will last a really long time. But yeah, you do need to do something to protect it. I would recommend I do not recommend using oil-based paints. They have just a heavy scent with them. They're messier to clean up. It's just kind of a pain. Okay, next, I heard feeding syrup can cause robbing. How do I prevent that? Well, if you're at a time of year when there is no flow, because that's what it really comes down to. If it's in the spring and you're feeding a new package of bees or whatever, nobody's really going to mess with them as long as you keep the entrance down to a manageable size. But you get into a dearth, if they can smell the feed, they're going to try to get to it. So the first thing you want to do is never use what they call the Boardman feeder or the entrance feeder. Do not use those ever, ever, never, never. If you use one, the only thing I want to see in there is water. The bees do need water. They do appreciate some water. So if you want to do that, that's okay. But don't use those, especially in a dearth, because you will have robbing. The second thing is a lot of people think you got to have the entrance wide open all year long. Entrance has to be wide open. It's got to be wide open. The bees are going to get, they're going to have a traffic jam getting in and out. I promise you, if you leave the entrance at the smallest setting on your entrance reducer, which is like, 3/4 of an inch or whatever, maybe an inch, they will be fine. I promise you, they will be fine. Now, I usually run like that 2.5 to 3 incher. I usually do that for most of the season, really. And then I go back to the smallest size entrance during the dearth, because it makes it so much easier for them to defend that 3/4 of an inch versus the full 16 inches all the way across. So keeping that entrance tightened up will make a big difference. But when bees are hungry and they're out searching, all they have to do is find a colony that's a little bit weaker. They'll probe a little bit, and if they can get in and rob, they will absolutely do so. Do I need to provide water for my bees even if there's a creek nearby? So I have never provided water for my bees. I live in an area surrounded by salt water, but there's a lot of, we have morning dew from the trees and things like that. And it ends up on the grass and it drips off of my house. And I think that they do a pretty good job of just finding water naturally. I know my neighbor said they were over there drinking out of the pool at one point in time. But they do a really good job of it, but it is going to depend on where you are. If you are in a very arid area and there's not a lot of, they don't have that morning dew and you don't have any kind of a water source, you're definitely going to want to try to do something. And there's a lot of different solutions out there. Some people have created some modified little bird bath kind of things. Just be mindful of mosquitoes, flush that water out, or I think you can maybe even put some little tabs in there that prevent the young mosquito larvae from actually, continuing to develop. But, dump the water and replace it every couple of days. There's a few of them that I've seen where people have put rocks in some kind of a little water tub. So the rocks give a place for the bees to stand on so they don't drown. That's always great. But yeah, they do need a little bit of water. You don't necessarily have to put it into the hive, but having it somewhere around certainly doesn't hurt. They love mud puddles. So if you have mud puddles near you, that's probably going to be all you need. My hive is very loud when I open it. Does that mean something's wrong? A lot of times when you're opening the hive, everything is kind of propolized together and you'll hear kind of a cracking noise when it opens up. And the bees immediately say, whoa, what's going on? And you'll hear a little bit of a whoo, kind of like a vibration that goes through the hive. That's just them saying like, hey, what's going on, right? So that they're kind of alerting to something's not right, but they're not necessarily in full alarm mode. So just go ahead and once you open it, you hear that little bit of a rumble. Just put down your smoke. You can even put the smoke down and close the lid, partially. Just let it sit for 20 or 30 seconds, and then come back in, add a little bit of smoke, and keep on going. But yeah, it's not unusual at all to hear a little bit of a rumble when you first open it, especially if there's a loud cracking kind of noise from the propolis tearing open. Next question, should I be doing weekly inspections during spring buildup? Absolutely. So when you do an inspection and everything looks completely great and perfect and happy and you're feeling like you are the beekeeper of the year, and then you close everything up on Saturday going into the next week feeling good, and then Sunday morning they decided that they're going to raise a queen cell. And the queen lays an egg that Sunday morning and it's developing along, and you say, hey, I already did my inspection last week. I'll see you guys again in 2 weeks. So the queen laid that egg on Sunday. By the Monday, 1 week later, you have a capped queen cell. You show up to do your inspection 6 days after that. That queen cell is 14 days old. And you may have just taken a one-way ticket to Swarmville, because they will typically swarm a couple of days before that virgin queen is emerging from her cell. So you definitely want to be on a 7 to 10 day schedule. I say please don't go more than 10 days. But once a week, if you want to tighten it down and go every 5 days, nothing wrong with that, right? You can go a little lower if you want to get down maybe into the 3 area, but don't do that all the time. If you get a little excited and you're like, I got to get in there again and see them, I get it. Just don't do it all the time. Give them time to settle and relax and get things done. There are a lot of people who will tell you that when you smoke a hive, that it will diminish their productivity for a couple of days. I've heard that ever since I started. And I had some people telling me, oh, you never want to smoke bees. It'll interfere with their productivity. And I've thought, well, you know what you're talking about. I guess we won't do that. And like I told you very early on, I didn't smoke the bees at all kind of when I first started. And it was a disaster. It was crazy. I have not seen a big difference. I have not seen anything that tells me that there is a big gap in productivity after I smoke them. So don't do that. Just smoke them as you need them. Or smoke them as they need it, maybe. Smoke them if you got them. Okay. If I didn't install a queen excluder yet, is it too late? It's never too late for a queen excluder. If you want to put a queen excluder on for whatever reason, if you're trying to do some kind of a Demery method, non-split, or if you're trying to say, okay, we're going with a single brood chamber approach. I want the queen in the bottom and I want everything above that to just be honey. Or maybe you have your double deeps and you want a queen excluder in between there to have all your medium supers above that. You can do it now. You can do it later. Doesn't matter. The only thing you have to do is you've got to make sure, well, one thing is that if you have drones that are above it, they're not going to be able to get out. So try to avoid trapping your drones. That's just kind of wasteful. But as it relates to the queen, the most important thing you can do is to definitively know her location so that you can make sure you're putting the queen excluder in the right place. If you just say, okay, I want to go to a single brood box configuration, and you just slap the queen excluder in there, but she's already up above that, well, that's going to be a little challenging when she's not going to be able to lay where you want her to lay. All right, everybody. Well, we made it through. I think that's all I've got for you right now. Feel free to check us out, youtube.com/@beekeeping for newbies. You can check out bestbeekeepinggear.com. I've got a couple of articles and things posted on there. We'll be adding some more to that in the near future for information on things you should be looking at as a new beekeeper, some gear things. There's info on Varroa treatments and all of that. So definitely check that out. And you can go to beekeepingfornewbies.com. It's NEWBEES.com. We've got a link to the Discord room in there. Links you can play the podcast directly through there if you want to do that. Information on the Master Beekeeper program that we're developing. There's a whole lot of pieces of information on there. Nuke box plans. I can't say it, but nuke box plans, swarm trap plans, all that good stuff. Okay, on the next episode, which I'll be getting out next week, I'm trying to get a couple people teed up for some interviews. I did have a suggestion from someone who commented on Spotify saying, hey, can you help us out with getting some more information out there around neonicotinoids and pesticides and things. And to be honest with you, I'm just not an expert in that space. I know Randy Oliver has done a lot. He's got a great article. It's like a 5-part article talking about this. I'm just not the person to speak to it in the level of depth that I think we would need for it to be valuable for everybody. But I'm going to try and get somebody teed up who might be able to speak to that and give us some information. I'm also trying to get a couple other people on because we haven't done a single interview all season, which is kind of weird because usually we do about 3 or 4 per year. So I'm working on getting a couple folks on in the coming months. But outside of that, that's all I got for you folks. So take care, be kind to one another. Remember that I love you. There's nothing you can do about it. We'll talk to you soon.